nowadays. So I thought I'd go ahead and show you what cross servers parking lots are like. So basically, right, every every place has got a spot, and they fluctuate between going in and out of peace. If you want to do your alliance a favor, guard, and I mean really just in general, your server will technically find you to be a very helpful person to have around if you just go around and basically guard your server spots. All right. Now, aside from the obvious being that you can plunder other players' spots, that is to say, like, hey, you know that X is going to come by to try and plunder. You can guard and guard in that parking lot. Obviously, you can't guard in all parking lots, so you have to kind of choose and kind of play it careful, right? You don't want to get too crazy. You can also park there as well and claim, the extra loot. Not, yeah, and that's including even your own parking spots in your server. So, you can see the difference though, right? There's 100% as opposed to 50. So, I mean, cross server spots are going to be heavy in demand. But, of course, if you're just wanting something on the down low and you're, just kind of working on your stuff as you normally do, you can park quite a few now at a time, which is really nice. So if you're already filled to the brim, you basically can park quite a few spots at a time. The downside is, okay, if you're not being very strategic with this, you can find yourself wasting a lot of what you gain in plunder and also in guarding. So you gotta be kind of mindful of the player spaces that you are invading. It's not any different than like here, for example. There's not anything to really hit, so you're just kind of wasting your time. The only place that has spots right now is us and then this state here, and so it's kind of you got to play it careful, basically. You might notice that there's a point score and a slot score down here. You might be wondering what exactly do you get, and there are ranking rewards and plunder rewards depending on whether or not you're guarding. And as you can tell, I don't hardly have any score at all, so it really doesn't mean much of anything, right? But that's kind of the idea is that you want to try and get into the rankings, and so you can get plunder rankings, you can get guard ranking just based on doing kills. So certain players are going to obviously succeed in this and others are not so much. Most of the huge whales are usually the ones that are in cross war, at least as far as I can tell. Now, as far as the parking spots are concerned, really about the only other thing that you can really nitpick on, and it varies from thing to thing, but like in this case, I'll go ahead and I'll just get rid of that combo piece for some crit rate. Fine, so be it, not a big deal. I kind of bounce between crit rate and combo just because it's not terribly difficult to acquire combo for me in this build, since you get so much of it in a Plume Monarch. I just recently actually awakened my class, and I would say the first thing you do after you awaken, and I notice a lot of people that rather than run like a Wind Gust, for example, they'll run Blitz Assault at an upgrade, and that's not a bad choice. You can just as easily use Wild Gust to get that extra 15% in terms of what you get in throughput. Plus, you're also doing it every 16 turns, as opposed to a 6k damage with damage immunity for every 24. There are just as many players that may jump to using Blade Pierce, and that to me makes a little bit more sense since it fires off more frequently. 100 slashes is probably a pretty good alternative. And Windborne Arrow is not an okay option if you had other options like Worldly Snare, for example, where you could increase your crit rate. So it just kind of varies depending on what your build is ultimately aiming to achieve. But like in mine, I could just as easily swap, say, like instead of using that, I could go to using 100 slashes, and it wouldn't be a huge drop in what I gain already. The only thing I don't care for about it really is, right now I'm not super big into damage res. and there's not a whole lot to gain from the attack bonus on current HP, but, it's like if I swap this out and go to this, and then we go ahead and give this out a try, we can see if that actually improves the DPS any. And all we've done is switch one skill out, but it never hurts to look at it from time to time. So here I'm doing 8 billion damage, okay, and with one little skill change, with this set in mind, right? Okay, all I'm going to do is take 100 slashes out, put Wild Geist on, and go and do the same exact thing I just did. And you kind of start to see like how this kind of works. It's just, 6 billion. So, it's like when you compare the two between 6 and 8, okay, you can kind of see why the logic of using Gust here may not make as much sense. Like, you may be better off using something that, is of a higher quality tier. You could also just as easily like flip-flop using like Smoke Bomb, for example. But I've seen like more builds that are super like stun heavy, or they try to basically they're trying to get as much DPS as they can throughput wise possible. And the only downside to Blitz, I think, is just that timer. Like, the one reason why I find 100 slashes to be a better choice there is just because you don't really need the damage immunity when you've already got Shroom Shield and Clone Strike. And if anything, I'll probably follow this up with either Worldly Snare to make this build a little bit better, or a fully upgraded Blade Pierce would probably do just as well. But even this, 100 slashes is probably not going to do this build any harm at all. And so like here, I'm going to take the combo. It's going to be a slight downgrade on the combo, but it'll be a huge upgrade in terms of the attack stats, so we'll go ahead and do it. I mean, I can nitpick it all day long, but it's one of those things that you got to get to a point where you're okay with what you've already got and just kind of work on it from there. It's my opinion. Some people are more stat specific, like you got to go for the highest possible stat, and there's nothing wrong with this, but, like right now I'm doing 50 and 65. Like that's a reasonable amount. The closer I can get to 60 to 70 on both would be ideal. In terms of what I gain from healing rate and a lot of other things that I'm working on, I would say about the only thing that really drives me bonkers more than anything really is just trying to get the goddarn skill not to be skill damage, trying to get combo damage, and it's a pain sometimes. But we're gonna go ahead and we're just gonna use all of our common fertilizer here. We'll run a little bit. Since we get most of it daily anyway, we might as well just go ahead and stack what we can get in terms of freebies. And let's go ahead and throw some advanced seeds down. One thing I like to do is I basically go ahead and I buy 5 fertilizer and I buy 5 seeds. You can also, go higher if you want to, but the expense in gems gets a little crazy. And that's, kind of what I do as far as the farm is concerned. That's really what I recommend if you're wanting to work on your farm, to build it up and level and really kind of make more use out of this. So like here I just got another skill damage. I'm sure I could probably save more of the food, and I probably will, because by the time I get to level 8, I'll be probably proccing more and more of those triple S's anyway. And eventually you can get those triple S pluses, and that's really where you start to see a significant jump, is when you actually get your prayer statue fully upgraded all the way. And the only way you really find yourself in that situation is you just got to get a lot of freaking premium seeds and a lot of fertilizer. And so it's kind of a drag, but it takes a while, and it's just one of those things that you can do. You can acquire going into the Parking Wars shop. You can buy like the Bountiful Harvest and get more fruit offerings, which I think is a huge plus. Same thing for mining. If you're not already doing that, you really probably ought to be, because you're going to gain more from it anyway as a byproduct of just playing the game like you normally would. So if you haven't already, check that out and make sure to watch this bit if you want to learn how to save some money and get 5% back on your purchases. Ultimately, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.